Welcome everyone. I'm excited to kick off our presentation today. The topic is Tafsir by Opinions. We'll explore how different viewpoints influence the interpretation of texts. Over the next few slides, we'll cover key concepts, examples, and the impact of opinions in tafsir. Let's get started. Today, I want to share with you some key points about Tafsir Fakhruddin ar-Razi, a renowned scholar from the 12th and 13th centuries. Fakhruddin ibn Ali ar-Razi was a Shafi'i scholar who mastered both grammatical sciences and philosophy. His tafsir, which is quite extensive, is printed in 8 large volumes, though it's believed that he did not complete the entire work himself. It's thought that his disciple, Shams ad-Din Ahmad ibn al-Khalil al-Kuwayi, finished it. What makes ar-Razi's tafsir particularly popular among scholars is its wide-ranging coverage of various sciences. It's notable for its focus on the relationship between different verses and chapters of the Quran. But beyond that, the tafsir functions almost like an encyclopedia of natural sciences. It dives into topics like mathematics, astronomy, and philosophy, often evaluating the opinions of astronomers and philosophers using their own terminology. Interestingly, he discusses the arguments of the Mu'tazila, a theological school, and offers mild refutations. When legal issues are involved, he explains the positions of different fiqh schools, clearly showing his preference for the Shafi'i school. He also touches on grammatical issues, but that's a smaller part of his work compared to his natural sciences discussions. Overall, this tafsir is a rich blend of exegesis and scientific exploration, reflecting the intellectual curiosity of his time and his deep engagement with both religious and worldly sciences. Let's explore the key points of Tafsir al-Qurtubi. Jami, Akam al-Quran wa al-Mubayyin lima tadamana min as-Sunnah wa al-Furqan, starting with some background about the author. Abu Abdullah Muhammad ibn Ahmad al-Ansari al-Qurtubi, who passed away in 1273 CE or 671 AH, was born in Cordoba, which is now part of Spain. He began his studies there and was actively involved in jihad against the Christians. During this time, he was captured but managed to escape, which is quite a remarkable story. He later traveled east, settling in Egypt, where he eventually passed away. Al-Qurtubi is most renowned for his tafsir, but he also authored important works on the afterlife and on Zuhd, emphasizing the importance of focusing on the hereafter rather than worldly ambitions. His tafsir begins with a comprehensive 70-page introduction that discusses the virtues of the Quran, proper recitation etiquettes, and the methodology of tafsir itself. His approach to tafsir is notable for its emphasis on fiqh, or Islamic jurisprudence, but it's not limited to that. In fact, his work can be categorized as tafsir bid-diraya, meaning it involves deduction and reasoning from the texts. He carefully includes relevant hadiths, though often without the chains of narration, and explains the perspectives of the Sahaba, Tabi'un, and scholars, citing sources where applicable. When he discusses a verse, he first explains the vocabulary, sometimes illustrating difficult words with poetry, and mentions variant recitations. In discussing fiqh issues, he presents major opinions along with their evidence and evaluates them critically. While he generally supports the Maliki school, he also considers other views. Importantly, he refutes deviant sects like the Shia, Mu'tazila, and Qadariyya, but always with scholarly respect. Overall, Tafsir al-Qurtubi is considered one of the monumental works in tafsir, indispensable especially for understanding the fiqh related to the Quran. It beautifully combines linguistic analysis, jurisprudence, and respectful critique, making it a cornerstone in Islamic scholarship. This slide introduces us to Nasir-ud-Din Abdullah ibn Ali al-Baydawi, a prominent Persian scholar of the Shafi'i school who passed away in 1291 CE, or 691 AH. He served as the chief judge of Shiraz, a significant position that highlights his expertise and reputation. His tafsir, Tafsir al-Baydawi, is essentially an abridged version of Az-Zamakhshari's al-Kashaf, but with a notable difference. Most of the Mu'tazili philosophy has been removed to align more with traditional Islamic teachings. However, it's interesting to note that he sometimes gets caught up in Az-Zamakhshari's explanations, which shows some influence from the original author. Additionally, he follows Az-Zamakhshari's practice of mentioning weak and fabricated hadiths at the end of each chapter, often to emphasize the virtues of reading that particular chapter. Al-Baidawi also draws material from other scholars' works, such as Ar-Razi's Mafati al-Ghaib and Tafsir ar-Raghib al-Isfahani, and he includes narrations from the Sahaba and the Tabi'un, which enriches his tafsir with a variety of perspectives. He does not leave any verse about the wonders of creation without explaining it through natural sciences, showing a deep engagement with scientific insights. He also discusses different Quranic recitations, but he does not limit himself strictly to the authentic narrations, which adds a broader scope to his tafsir. Despite this, it remains quite free from Isra'iliyat or stories from the Israelites, maintaining the purity of Islamic teachings. The language of his tafsir is very polished and elegant, making it not only informative, but also a pleasure to read. Throughout history, many Islamic scholars have highly esteemed this tafsir, and numerous commentaries and annotated versions have been produced to deepen understanding. This brings us to the concept of tafsir by opinion, an approach that involves interpretation and reasoning, which is a key theme in understanding how scholars engage with the Quran beyond just literal translation. Today, I want to introduce you to a remarkable scholar, Abdullah ibn Mahmud an-Nasafi, who lived until 1302 CE or 701 AH. He was a highly respected Hanafi scholar known for his extensive work in Usul al-Fiqh and for writing detailed commentaries on earlier classical texts. His tafsir, which we'll focus on today, is actually an abridged version of al-Baidich's chapter, making it accessible yet comprehensive. When discussing the various recitations of the Quran, an-Nasafi primarily concentrates on the authentic 7, clearly attributing each recitation to its respective reciter. One notable aspect of his tafsir is how he approaches legal issues. He carefully explains the arguments from different schools of thought, debates their validity, and ultimately supports the positions of the Hanafi school, which he follows. It's also interesting to note that his discussions on grammatical issues are quite brief, which keeps the commentary clear and to the point. Overall, his tafsir is considered medium-sized, neither too lengthy nor too concise, and it's characterized by its straightforward and clear style. Now, an important point to highlight is that in his tafsir, he took care to delete fabricated hadiths, especially those falsely attributed to virtues of certain acts, ensuring the content remains authentic and trustworthy. This approach exemplifies how scholarly integrity and a focus on authenticity are central themes in understanding classical tafsir works, which ties directly into our overall theme of the importance of reliable interpretation of the Quran. Today, we'll be discussing Tafsir al-Khazin, a notable work by the scholar Ali ibn Khalil ash-Shahi, who lived from 1279 to 1340 CE, or 678 to 740 AH. He was popularly known as al-Khazin, which means the warehouseman, because he was in charge of a book warehouse in Damascus. Although he was born and raised in Baghdad, he spent most of his scholarly life in Damascus, where he developed his vast knowledge. Al-Khazin was a Shafi'i scholar and authored numerous books on diverse topics. One of his major works is a 10-volume compilation called Maqbul al-Manqul, where he collected hadiths from key sources like the Musnads of Ash-Shafi and Ahmad, the 6 major books, the Muwatta of Malik, and the Sunan of ad-Daraqutni. This highlights his deep engagement with hadith literature. His tafsir is essentially a condensed version of al-Baghawi's tafsir, but with added insights from earlier tafsirs. It's important to note that he mentions many biblical stories, known as Isra'iliyat, but without evaluating their authenticity. His tafsir also extensively discusses battles from the Prophet's time whenever they are mentioned in the verses, and it delves into legal issues in great detail, sometimes even touching on topics outside the scope of tafsir itself. A distinctive feature of his tafsir is its emphasis on spiritual lessons and advice, reflecting his Sufi inclinations. The entire tafsir spans 7 medium-sized volumes, and it remains widely circulated. It's especially popular among those who enjoy stories and narratives, but it's crucial to remember that it requires a critical review before being relied upon as a scholarly reference, given its conversational and sometimes unverified content. This brings us to the broader theme of our presentation, Tafsir by Opinion, highlighting how personal interpretations and reflections influence tafsir and how we should approach these works with both appreciation and caution. Today, I want to highlight some key points about Tafsir Abu Hayyan, also known as Al-Bar al-Muhit. Muhammad ibn Yusuf ibn Hayyan al-Andalusi, who lived from 1256 to 1344 CE, was a renowned scholar in recitations, poetry, and grammar. He initially followed the Thahiri school of law, but later adopted the Shafi'i school. His studies took him across North Africa, and he ultimately settled in Egypt. This tafsir spans 8 large volumes and is highly regarded among scholars as an essential reference for understanding grammatical structures in the Quran. What's particularly interesting about Abu Hayyan's approach is that he emphasizes grammatical analysis, making his tafsir resemble a grammar book more than a traditional tafsir. However, he also covers other important areas such as fiqh issues, different recitations, Quranic eloquence, and narrations from early Orthodox scholars. Additionally, he often refutes philosophical and grammatical positions held by Az-Zamakhshari, providing a critical perspective that enriches the understanding of the text. This approach shows us how deeply interconnected language, grammar, and interpretation are in understanding the Quran, and it reflects the broader theme of how opinions shape tafsir. Let's take a closer look at this slide. Here, we see the title Tafsir an-Naysaburi, Garib al-Quran wa Raghib al-Furqan, which highlights the unique approach of this tafsir. This work was authored by Nizam-ud-Din ibn al-Hasan an-Naysaburi, who passed away in 1328 CE, or 728 AH. He's often called an-Nitham al-Iraj, and although he was born in Qum, he grew up in Nishapur. There, he became renowned as a literary scholar, a grammarian, and a Quran reciter. What makes his tafsir particularly interesting is how he approached exegesis. He condensed Ar-Razi's tafsir critically, but he also added insights from other tafsirs like Al-Kashaf, as well as from the tafsirs of the Sahaba and Tabi'un. His format is quite unique among tafsirs. After mentioning a verse, he discusses the different recitations, carefully attributing each to one of the 10 major reciters. Then, he looks at where pauses might occur, and explains how these pauses can change the meaning of the verse. Following that, he analyzes the relationship between verses and begins his tafsir by explaining the grammatical meaning of the words and phrases. He also discusses fiqh issues, presenting various scholarly opinions and defending the orthodox Sunni position. Interestingly, he includes discussions on natural sciences, especially when verses mention wonders of creation, linking them to scientific understanding. Moreover, because of his strong Sufi inclinations, he delves into the spiritual implications of the verses and shares personal insights gained through his spiritual journey. This blend of linguistic, theological, scientific, and spiritual perspectives makes his tafsir quite comprehensive. Today, you'll find his work printed in the margins of some editions of tafsir at Tabari, and it remains widely read by scholars. Now, moving to the next point, the concept of tafsir by opinion. This approach highlights how his personal views and interpretations play a significant role in his commentary, blending traditional exegesis with individual insights. This method underscores the richness and depth of his tafsir, making it a valuable resource for those seeking a multifaceted understanding of the Quran. Today, I want to focus on the key points about Tafsir al-Jalalain, which is a significant work by 2 renowned scholars both bearing the title Jalal-ud-Din, meaning glory of the religion. The first scholar, Jalal ad-Din as-Sayuti, is well known for his extensive Tafsir ad-Dur al-Manthur, but today we are concentrating on the second scholar, Jalaluddin al-Mahali. His full name was Muhammad ibn Ibrahim al-Mahali, and he was born in Egypt. He was a prominent Shafi'i scholar who chose to focus on teaching fiqh and engaging in trade, rather than taking a judicial post. He authored many simple and concise books across different fields, which gained widespread popularity. His tafsir began with Surah Al-Kahf and ended with Surah An-Nas. He also started to tafsir Surah Al-Fatiha, but passed away before completing it. After his death, As-Sayuti continued from where he left off, covering from Surah Al-Baqarah to Surah Al-Isra, which is nearly half of the Quran. The approach of this tafsir is to explain the basic meanings of the verses, mentioning the most probable opinions, and relying on grammatical explanations only when necessary. There is also some reference to well-known recitations. Interestingly, the two scholars mostly agreed, with only a few differences. One notable difference concerns the concept of the ruh, or soul. Al-Mahali described the ruh in Surah Sad as a subtle body or substance that animates man when blown into him. As-Sayuti agrees with this interpretation in his tafsir of Surah Al-Hayr. However, in his tafsir of verse 85 of Surah Al-Isra, As-Sayuti states that the true nature of the ruh is known only to Allah, and it's better not to try to define it. Despite its brevity, just one volume, this tafsir remains an invaluable and highly popular work, appreciated for its clarity and depth. Let's take a closer look at Abu Sa'ud Muhammad ibn Mustafa al-Ahmadi's tafsir, which is widely appreciated for its clarity and eloquence. His work is based on well-known tafsir sources like Al-Kashaf and Al-Baydawi, but he also made sure to avoid many common pitfalls found in other commentaries. However, it's important to note that he did mention some fabricated hadiths related to the merits of certain surahs. Despite that, his primary focus was on explaining the beauty and miraculous construction of the Quranic expressions. He often highlights the eloquence that makes the Quran unique, and he only discusses variant recitations when they add depth to the understanding of a verse. You will also notice that he rarely mentions Israeliyat, and when it comes to legal opinions, he lists them selectively, only when they clarify or deepen the understanding of the verses. Additionally, he sometimes explores different grammatical meanings of verses, choosing the most suitable interpretation after providing evidence. This tafsir has been reprinted multiple times in 5 volumes, which speaks to its popularity among scholars. It's especially valued for its clarity and beauty, making it a significant resource in the study of the Quran. Overall, it's a prime example of a tafsir that combines scholarly depth with accessible language, aligning perfectly with our theme of understanding the Quran through insightful interpretation. Today, I want to highlight some key aspects of Tafsir al-Alusi. Ruh al-Ma'ani fi Tafsir al-Quran al-Thimwa az-Zab, al-Mathani, which is a comprehensive and highly respected tafsir work. Firstly, As-Sayyid Mahmud Afandi al-Alusi, who lived from 1802 to 1853 CE, was among the most prominent Shafi'i scholars in Iraq. He was appointed as the Mufti of Baghdad, which shows his deep authority in Islamic legal matters. He was very familiar with different madhabs, and interestingly, he often followed the opinions of Abu Hanifa on many issues, demonstrating a balanced approach to scholarly diversity. The author's approach in his tafsir is notable for its careful and honest compilation of opinions and narrations from early scholars, alongside explanations from later scholars. Every statement is clearly attributed, and conflicting views are presented without bias, allowing readers to see the full spectrum of scholarly thought. Al-Alusi also critically examines unorthodox interpretations, especially from groups like the Mu'tazilis and the Shia, often refuting their heretical views. He doesn't shy away from discussing scientific theories related to creation, offering critiques of those he finds unlikely or inaccurate. His discussions are thorough, covering grammatical and legal issues in detail, always maintaining objectivity. He also critically addresses the Isra'is and occasionally ridicules their claims, emphasizing the importance of authentic sources. Additionally, he mentions variant recitations of the Quran, including some beyond the most authentic ones, reflecting his comprehensive approach. He supports grammatical arguments with quotes from classical literature and concludes many sections with reflections on spiritual lessons. Overall, Ruh al-Ma'ani serves as a kind of tafsir encyclopedia, a collection of diverse perspectives, critically presented. While sometimes emphasizing technical details, his methodology remains balanced and unbiased, making this work invaluable for both scholars and students of tafsir. This slide reminds us of the importance of understanding tafsir, not just as a translation or a single interpretation, but as a rich, multi-layered field that involves careful analysis, scholarly debate, and spiritual insight.